Welcome to the Narrative Mindset Podcast. This is your first time tuning in. I really appreciate you taking your time out to tune in to the podcast. Uh, it's a great place. I try to give a narrative mindset of what I'm thinking. And right now, I'm having some issues because I'm trying to find my voice. I mean, at first I was using AI. I'm not going to lie. I was using AI, and then I happened to read YouTube, and it was like, oh, they're coming up with a rule, and they're not going to allow people to use AI. And people don't really respect AI either, because they feel like, if you didn't put in the work to do the the podcast, why should I listen? And I guess I can understand that. I can understand that. So I'm doing it now with my voice. I finally got my microphone and uh don't laugh, but I was using my pop filter and I was wondering, I said, man, why does this thing work? And it was backwards. But, that's another story. I want to start today kind of with I don't know, something happened on my day. I do rideshare, and I had picked up this guy, and I waited more time than I was supposed to, but I didn't care. And then he came out and he said, "Hey, um, I'm gonna give you a tip." And usually, when riders say they're gonna give you a tip, it usually never happens. So I didn't think about it. I started this trip and we went on ahead. And it was funny because his cousin was in the car with us, and his cousin was like, you know, "Can I get my tip?" He was right next to him, and we laughed for a minute. And we got to a stop sign, and it was on the side of the highway, and it was one of those peddlers, the ones with the cardboard or whatever I need, extra money or whatever. And I don't really get into giving them money because I'm doing right here. I'm struggling as it is. I'm literally working for every dollar that I get. I'm watching it and counting it and dealing with all kinds of uh people complaining and sending false accusations and Lyft threatening to deactivate me every other day. And I work too hard for the little bit of money that I make with Lyft. So when we stopped, I looked in my rearview mirror and he was giving the guy $4. He just gave me 20 as a tip. He was giving this guy $4. So we continue, and he has a phone call, and there's a Prius. I'm not listening to his call. I'm not ear hustling, but we're in a Prius, so I can't really help it. Um, this chick was on the phone with him, and she had asked him for 50. So they talked a little bit, and before she could ask again and say, did you send it? He said, I already sent it. I was like, oh man, this dude is maybe I need to work for him instead of Lyft because he's passing out money like this. And then I dropped him off at the bus station, but it was just kind of different. I mean, I'm not a stingy guy. Don't get me wrong. I just work too hard for what I have and the little bit of money that I do get to give it away. It just doesn't make sense. So I just don't. That's just me. And when for those of you who want to know, when I'm down and out, I don't ask for money and nobody gives me any. That's just life. You have to figure it out and just get out there and do things you know, jobs you don't want to work or, stuff you don't want to do. The bills have to be paid. And that's just the reality of life, you know. I mean, we live in a world where, unfortunately, right now, it's strange that we live in a world right now, and I'm probably going to upset a few people when I say this, but if you listen and absorb what I'm saying and you're true to yourself, you'll agree with exactly what I'm saying. We live in a world right now where right now you really can't say what you want to say. That's number one. You really can't say what you want to say. And we've seen that with, unfortunately, Charlie Kirk. Whoever the guy was, what he said, somebody disagreed with it and, did what, you know, people usually do. We've had school shootings and unfortunately, it's just not good. There was a church shooting the other day, not far from me, actually, Grand Blanc. And the guy lived right up the street from the church. And I want to say something here. And I want to say, number one, before I say this, nowhere near prejudice. Nowhere near it. But when school shootings happen, those are usually white guys. Church shootings, that's usually a white guy. The church shooting, that's typically stuff that far left, I think, if I'm saying that right. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but it's usually the real kind of way far out in the field by themselves left white guys usually do, and they for some reason they get offended by what one person says or a group of people says or whatever. And the reason I'm mentioning that is I also want to say that usually inner city, black folks, we hate each other, we kill each other, we're robbing each other, we're doing everything to each other. But that's the key word. We're doing it to each other. So white folks out in good neighborhoods, living good, way out in the woods, houses quarter mile off the road, could care less. And I don't expect them to because it doesn't have anything to do with them. Their kids go to a great school, you know, live in a great house, great neighborhood, all kind of room to run around on the soccer team, on the whatever team, dance team. Nothing to do with inner city uh, drama. So my point is this: in my opinion, just in my opinion, I feel like right now America is saying this, school shootings, church shootings, whatever, that has nothing to do with black folks. I'm not. I don't remember us doing anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some black folks who have done things to various, some similar to those incidents, but not many. It's mostly a Caucasian white folks problem. Just like I said, inner city stuff. We still in scat packs and just all kind of stuff. Running from the police and killing each other because he looked at you wrong or whatever. Inner city black folks issues. So I don't expect white people to just. I don't expect that to be their problem because it's not. But my point is that America right now is gotten to a point to where America is saying, you know, you need to feel this way about this subject. and it's almost a authoritarian kind of regime, somewhat, and it makes you think like, at what point are we? What point has America gotten to that we're telling people that this is the way you're going to think, and this person getting killed or dying or whatever, it doesn't make sense, and they're getting to the point to where they're firing people because they're exercising their freedom of speech, which is one of the reasons why we love America, because freedom of speech. You know, you can say what you want to say. I may not like it, but you have the freedom to your own opinion. And that's being turned around. We're being told that you will think and say what I want you to say if you want this job to be able to raise your family. But on the other hand, it's also coming to a point to where it's like, is the job still really worth, what you're, when you weigh it out, is it still really worth it? Because with the tariffs going up, with everything else, jobs just aren't what they used to be. $25 is not $25 anymore. $30 isn't $30 anymore. I mean, it's like, if you do the math, $30 an hour is, I think, $700 a week. $50 an hour, that's I believe $2,000 a week bring home, which, don't get me wrong, is great. But what I'm saying is, before some of you were even born, probably, I mean, 50 an hour back in like 98. I mean, General Motors was paying 30 an hour, and that was good money. So, I mean, 50 an hour was like, I mean, you like, you know, a doctor or something. You were making good money. But I wanted to say something about that because that was something that was on my mind. I also wanted to ramble a little bit and kind of get some of the things that I think about kind of off my mind. Another thing I was thinking about was being prepared, and I think this is a huge mistake that we all make, and I didn't realize it until I did the work on myself, and it's amazing the way I think, because my mother always said that she always basically said I was curious, but it was more than that. I'm curious to a point to where I'll think about something, but I will not let it go until I get it all figured out. It could be 30 years down the road, and I'll look back, zip back through all my memories, and kind of put everything together, put the puzzle together, should I say. But uh, being ready as an individual, um, and what made me think about this is I didn't think about it until I got divorced from my wife. And when I got divorced, I was running around, I was telling everybody, everything was her fault, and she did this, and she was this kind of person, and this, that, and the other. And then I thought about it, and I thought about it. I thought about a saying, God give me the strength to change the things that I can, accept the things that I can, and to understand the difference. And you'd be surprised at how much of your life that applies to. Because I thought about that, and I sat back and I said, well, I've been blaming everything on her, and she was this kind of person, and she was this, and she was that. I said, well, let me apply that saying to this particular situation. And I said, well, I can't change her, so let's get that out the way. I said, but I can change me. So I looked at myself and I said, where was I in that particular situation? And I said, and my things that I look at when I look at defining a person, I look at, okay, are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you uh, content? Are you peaceful? And do you know what is your business? And I want to start off by saying a lot of people don't know what love is. I don't know how simple it is. And in my opinion, that's just my opinion. I think that some people still go off the high school love. Hey, I love you. Okay, hon, I love you. And it's off, you're off to the races. But some people, and these are grown adults, believe it or not, still look at it as, hey, love you, honey. And then if there's nothing, it's like they're feeling some kind of way. Me, I'm different. It's like number one, I was Scorpio. So at least now that I've done the work on myself and I've took time to understand what love is, I want a person to don't tell me you love me until you fully understand it, because I'm going to ask you and challenge you to understand what it is and tell me, so that you know exactly what you're saying and why you're saying it. Just in my opinion, and me, the way I define love is I say love is pretty much something something you really don't want to do. It's like you got a wife, you know, do you really want to go out there in the middle of winter and brush her car off and get all the snow off? Do you really want to, it, yard is pitch dark. Do you really want to get your gun and go outside? Well, I mean, some of you probably do. So let me rephrase that question. Do you really want to go down there and put your life on the line? Probably not. But because you love your family and everything, you will. Because if you didn't, you'd do her just like you do the ex that you don't care about, that you don't love. You know, you just, hey, you go out there and you go back to sleep. And that's what I believe love is. Love is just something you're doing something that you really don't want to do for a person, and that's considered love. And when you make that a priority, that's when you're in love with a person. You love your kids. Nobody wants to get off work when your kids are acting up and go pick them up from school, or all this type of stuff. You losing money, you still got bills to pay. Look, you do it because you do that because you love them. Family member gets out of hand or whatever. The reason you don't knock his head off is because you love him. You might, family, but you might beat him up or whatever, but you don't do what you would do to the same person on the street to him because you love him. And that's what I think love is. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because part of the doing the work on yourself means you have to love yourself. You have to be in love with yourself. And that means you have to put yourself first also. And you have to love yourself. What is love? What is my definition of love? My definition of love is doing something you don't want to do. So you have to do things you don't want to do. You have to stop using that treadmill you got as a closet and get all that stuff off of it and actually use it. No, no, nobody wants to be on a treadmill for half an hour, but you do it because you love yourself enough to do some work. You eat right because you love yourself enough, and you're putting yourself first, so that you're going to do the work just to, so that you can be here longer for, for your kids, for your mom, for your brother, for whoever. And that's part of loving yourself first. And that's the first step. And that's the first step in doing the work on yourself. It is loving yourself. And that's who you have to put first. And I was thinking earlier that really loving yourself and putting yourself first is really the first step in about 90% of any problem that you have. Because when you feel better and you know that you're loving yourself, then you tend to, I don't know, it seems like everything else seems to fall in line, you know. The next step is making sure that you're content where you are in life, you know. And my example is if you're, you know, if you're climbing up a mountain and you're free climbing, when you get to yours, if it's two people, when you get to you get all the way up to the line, but you got somebody behind you, and there's ledges going up the mountain that you can kind of rest on. Number one, once you get to one of those ledges, then that would be considered, in my definition, that would be considered content because you're at a place where you can you can congratulate yourself because you've got to a certain point. You still have a while to go. You still have other steps to go, other ledges to go, but you're at a point where you can kind of enjoy the scenery a little bit, take a rest, maybe take a nap or whatever. Or, if you want, and most of us do, we can stay right there on that ledge and enjoy life at that level. And that's what I think being content is, especially in today's time where everybody is they're working themselves to death. You got your side hustles, you got all kinds of things. And real quick, it surprises me that I saw a house for 450 and it was bought within, I think, a couple months. I mean, I was like, wow, who in the world has enough to even put the down payment on the house, much less, afford the house payment, and that's crazy. But so we're at happy, then content, peaceful. Peaceful basically means it's pretty much for me. It just means if it ain't me, if it happened outside my apartment or I wasn't there when it happened, you know, and there are some other things, if I'm dating a woman and it's not my kids, the money she's making, when I'm not helping her make it, all that stuff. It's just none of my business, you know. And peace means that you get everybody else's business out of yours and you get out of everybody's business and your life becomes much more peaceful. And you can ask people, but they'll say that, when I finally found my peace, I ain't giving this up, you know. And what I was saying just a few minutes ago, I kind of mentioned it. Another part of being peaceful, and it's something that we do all the time when we meet somebody, and that's why the conversation usually lasts all night or 5 or 6 hours and all this other stuff because we're telling each other everything that's not each other's business. Almost 98% of the stuff that we talk about in that first conversation ain't each other's business. And then we wonder down the road why, this person, he crazy, he mad about my baby daddy who come over and mad because I got a business with with your baby daddy or whatever else. When it wasn't his business to begin with, you know. And so we have to remember that. So we're past happy, loving yourself, happy, content, peaceful. Um, and I guess the last part of that would be just growth. The most important part is growth. And I want to kind of say this, and I'm hoping whoever hears this can understand what I'm saying. Make growth the most important part because it is the most important part because that's the one fight that never ends. And nothing's more important than growth. And the reason I say that is because people who know me, they know I'm really not a fighter or whatever you want to call it. Lost a couple fights here and there, but I walked away from them content because I said, okay, I got in this fight and guy got the upper hand or whatever, but that's fine because he's not going to stop me from growing. And, true enough, I went my way, he went his. He went his way with the mindset of I'm the tough guy. I won this fight. I went my way like, okay, hey, the fight is what it is, but not gonna stop me from winning. It's not gonna stop me from growing. It's not gonna stop me from getting where I want to be, which I've always put first. And the reason I say that is because as children, especially with our fathers and some other people, we teach our children to grow up and well, you better hit him back, or if he wins, you better go pick up something and knock him upside the head, or whatever, and things of that nature. But we don't think about the fact that number one, I was watching a prison TV show, and the guy said, I got into an argument with this dude. I hit him. He fell. He hit his head. Now I'm in prison, for, for, manslaughter or something like that I got to do, for the rest of my life. So we don't talk about that side of the coin. We don't talk about what happens if you do go pick up something and let's say, you lost a fight and you go, we're known for picking up whatever is around us. But you have to remember that the minute you pick up an object, then number one, you're putting that person's life in danger and they have a right to defend themselves. That's number one. Number two, if you hit that guy, you may hit harder than you thought you did. He falls, hits his head. If he dies, you won the fight. But guess what? There's a whole lot of other people that you're going to have to fight that are much bigger, much stronger, and are much more angrier than he is. So which fight do you want to lose? Do you want to lose the fight with him, or do you want to lose the fight with the guy in prison who gonna want something else after he win the fight? That's what we should be teaching our kids, that it's okay to walk away. We get wrapped up too much. That I also want to say we get wrapped up in too much, and I'm glad that I said that about the fight first because we get wrapped up so much in wanting to please people that don't matter. And it's crazy because we try to please these people who are in the same position we in or less. It's like, like I said, it's crazy. And my example, I think I said this in another podcast episode, but I used Will Smith and Chris Rock. When Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, none of those people in there, all who had money, were impressed, like Will thought they would be. And don't get me wrong, Will Smith, love you to death, bruh. Wish I was you. But none of those people were impressed. Denzel Washington wasn't impressed. None of them were impressed. They were impressed with Chris Rock because to have that happen to you and be able uh, to keep your composure was impressive. To finish the show after you got slapped in front of, you know, all your peers almost. That was impressive. That's what I'm impressed by. But as far as Will Smith, like I said, love Will Smith to death. You know, my man to the end. Would sit down and talk to him. Love to sit down and talk to him. But I believe in his mind, he was thinking something else. He was thinking, and I'm not saying he was, I'm just saying in his mind, I believe he was thinking that if I do this, if I, whatever, finally stand up for his wife or whatever the case may be, because I don't know anything about that. But I believe he was thinking if I did this, then everybody would be impressed and be rooting me on and all this type of stuff. No, man. You lost, $40 million. And if I'm glad that Chris Rock didn't do him like uh, Jim Carrey had mentioned. Jim Carrey, love you, bro. Another great dude. You always invited to the barbecue. You ain't even got to ask. But Jim Carrey said straight up. He said, I'd have sued him for $200 million. I'd have got up the next day and sued him for $200 million. I said, dang, Jim Carrey didn't hold back at all. Like, bruh, you try to get his whole, you trying to get Will Smith's whole fortune. Send him back to the projects. Wouldn't that be something? Will Smith living in the projects, making movies, buying food stamps from you. Like, man, what in the world? What in the whatever that movie was, Wild West? Wild West is going on there. But that's what I'm kind of getting around to here is you have to stop trying to impress people that don't matter. And I'm not saying that they don't matter at all. I'm saying they don't matter as far as your success is concerned. Because if me and you are in the same spot, you don't matter because you can't do no more for me than I can do for you. You can't help me we both on the same step. You can't help me get to the next step. So, I have to keep moving and it's your job to either keep catching up past me or whatever your journey is. And we have to keep that in mind and kind of use it as far as life is concerned. And that's it for today's episode. I'm Gerald Tab. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Narrative Mindset Podcast.